think that my observation is using these sort of recruiting services are very similar to over-relying on paid digital media. It's the same thing because you're paying them a lot of money for a very powerful result that can be very helpful, and you're getting a lot of volume, but not always the highest quality stuff. You have to supplement that with the ground game hustle because you have to put in 10 times more work than you think is reasonable. A lot of gym owners will I put up an Indeed ad, I didn't get anybody, or I did one Facebook post, and it's like, that ain't it, baby.
This is the Reinforce Your Gym podcast with your host, Dustin Vogel. This show is about arming gym owners with the tools, strategies, and lessons they need to take their business to the next level. That way, they can make a greater impact in their community. Now, let's get to work and reinforce your gym.
All right, guys, welcome in for another episode of the Reinforce Your Gym podcast. I got a special guest that I'm very thrilled to have on the show, and that is Mark Fisher. If you guys don't know who he is a pioneer in the fitness industry. He co-founded Mark Fisher Fitness, and he really redefined a lot of things in the industry because you're gonna learn once you hear Mark speak. He added wild fun, he added quirkiness, he added a lot of cool things. He even referred to his clients as ninjas that were after their fitness goals. So that's really cool. So he's got a unique look on branding, culture, client experience. We're going to dig into that today. And then what you guys should know is that he also helps gym owners and studio owners grow their business with Business for Unicorns. And so he definitely knows how to coach and how to help other studio and gym owners to grow their business to the next level. So I'm excited to have him. It's an honor. Welcome to the show, Mark Fisher.
Thank you so much for having me. Long time listener, first time caller.
There you go. I love it. So let's go into your origin story, man. I know it's where all good podcasts start. For the people who are in my audience that do not know who Mark Fisher is, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into the fitness industry and how you got into business too?
Yeah, so I guess the story starts like a lot of people, probably in our industry, in high school. Right. So I grew up as somebody who was not particularly into lifting weights. My observation is a lot of gym owners either come through the sports background or the very cliche skinny, Charles Atlas got sand kicked in his face by the bully kid. And I was the latter. So I started working out because I was very skinny and I hoped that one day a girl might kiss me. And I also was very into theater and I planned to be a professional actor. So I knew that this was something that would matter, that I wanted to look a certain way to pursue my chosen career. And yeah, I kind of had this interesting experience of the gym, which originally was a place that, you're the skinny kid, the sand kicked in the face kid. You're not usually the guy most excited to be in the gym. And I certainly wasn't at first. But over time, what was interesting is certainly through my early 20s and into my mid 20s when I was in New York and I'm pursuing this career as an actor and, I don't have control over a lot. I'm auditioning for gigs. I can't always get them. I'm struggling to pay rent. Girls are still, kind of intimidating at this point. I slowly found that the gym and training was the one thing I could count on in life. It was the one thing that no matter what happened, I could always count on the gym and I could always do this positive thing for myself. And I am a very nerdy person. So when I like a thing, and I really, 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 really liked fitness. So because it was something of an escape for me, for my, endless parade of demeaning and demoralizing day jobs as an actor, I got really in training. So I started reading, and this was the early aughts, right? So older listeners will feel me, right? So I was I wasn't just reading Muscle and Fitness, right? I wasn't just reading Flex. I was reading Muscular Development. I was reading Reps, Iron Man, all the weird Robert Kennedy ones, right? And I literally for a 5-year period read every single magazine kind of cover to cover. And it's interesting because now at this point in my career, I'd look back on some of it, maybe some of that was, maybe a little bit bro science-y, dripping with anabolic steroids. But, it gave me some foundation that by the time I was in my late 20s, to make a long story short, I decided to get a day job as a personal trainer. I was all right, well, I like this. I love this. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm training my friends for free. Let me do this for real. And then I stumbled by way of a client onto a website called T Nation or T Muscle. And I found myself at sort of this heyday where a lot of the best strength coaches and powerlifters and personal trainers and everyone was writing for the site at that time. And I became so obsessed at that point that I always described, fitness and training as like the mistress I left my wife for. Like I loved acting. I wanted to be an actor, but man, I really liked reading about deadlifts, right? So I'm really into training and I started developing a niche among other actors, right? So people in the Broadway community started to know that like, oh, there's this guy that really knows what he's doing. He gets good results. He's friendly enough to be around. And I think what happened, and this will relate, I think, to maybe some of the things we'll talk about in this podcast, was I had heard someone, and to this day, I can't figure out which mentor it was, but someone was reading 2 books a week, and I was like, "Ah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna read 2 books a week. I'll read," and this is what's funny. I was like, "I'll read a book about training, your nutrition for training, and then I'll read a book about business for acting," right? Because I was like, acting is a business. I should read about business. And at this point, it was interesting because I still was very much like, I'll never open a gym. That sounds terrible. I don't want real estate. I don't want staff. That sounds terrible. And I don't know because our memories are fallible, right? So I think about this period where like I know that I thought that, but also I'm reading like E-Myth, I'm reading like Good to Great. And then within about 12 months of me adopting this discipline, I just got more and more interested in the business piece. And I started to say, like, oh, having a gym can be like it can be creating like a little community and like I can, decide who I want to work with and we can all make money doing a cool thing where we help other people and we can work on ourselves. We can have book clubs and we can have fun learning together and doing a cool thing. And in many ways, that was what gave birth to Mark Fisher Fitness, which was the gym that me and my co-founder founded, I guess was the very end of 2011, technically. And, as Dustin mentioned, the tagline is ridiculous humans, serious fitness. So particularly in the beginning, it was a very irreverent brand. Our mascot is the unicorn. We call our members ninjas. It's not a gym. It's the enchanted ninja clubhouse of glory and dreams. And yeah, it's been kind of a wild ride. So we did that for many, many years. We might talk a little bit. We just actually sold it, which is Looney Tunes to think about 2 weeks ago. But yeah, it's been a ride, man. We're lucky we did pretty well, and that opened some other opportunities. But I'll pull up there. I think that gives insight into sort of how I got here.
Yes, no, I love it. I'd imagine your acting lended to all these, quirky ideas and fun ways of making culture more exciting than just, the bland space that a gym can be. It can be very hardcore,
Yeah.
black and white, just no color. Everybody's kind of looking like tough guy at each other with their headphones on, and you wanted to make it a place where almost people connotate the word fun with fitness, which is not a word a lot of people would attribute
Yeah.
fitness.
It's
So
very true. Yeah.
dive into that more.
Yeah.
How did you design your culture? How did all these ideas pop in your head? Where did these unique branding things come from?
Yeah. I mean, it was, I think, a lot of weird combination of, first of all, it is true. I am, have a career as an actor. And I think there's a certain facility you have to develop to communicate and to listen and certainly to be somewhat creative. Certainly, full stop, creative. However, I am just by nature a very eccentric person in a way that is like more than just like just an actor. Like I'm just kind of a weird dude. And I tend to speak in tongues and have an unusual turn of phrase. And essentially, particularly the beginnings of MFF, my business partner, Michael, I think did a very good job of helping codify me saying various crazy things. And then we would just sort of adopt them into the lexicon of the gym. And again, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, we were just crazy and we just like we thought of it. Like we were reading books, like we were trying to do what we knew how to do. We were pretty intentional from early on about like how words define a culture and iconography and what does the space look like and what do we call, the classes and even like the way we taught fitness, right? We wouldn't talk about anterior pelvic tilt. We talk about porn star. And we wouldn't talk about, anterior rib cage flare. We call it rib cage boner. So we essentially developed a whole approach to the pedagogy of learning movement that was like crazy because I do have to emphasize that the serious fitness part was like real because oftentimes people think with good reason that fun is synonymous with light and soft on the fitness piece. And we were like serious fitness people. Like we were like really in the game. And I had like a staff was like I'm talking like not even just like starting strength. I'm talking like super training, the hard stuff. These were people that were taking the fitness very seriously, but also were wearing a Speedo and a cape and cursing like a sailor and throwing around dildos. So it's just this weird mix of things that I think that's part of what made it so interesting. People was just so confusing and strange. This weird mix of like very serious strength training where we're going to be pretty adept with using accommodating resistance training to really get you strong like a savage, but also there's literally a drag queen ran through, and at any moment, like a monkey could run through. It was just like a complete melee circus. So
I love
yeah,
it. I love it. Sounds like my type of place. If I was living in the area, I would have signed up. So let's dive into how do you find people? Like, again, it almost sounds like you are recruiting people to be members of a circus, but
yeah,
because you were
yeah,
a higher price point,
yeah.
people are not going to just come in and just work with a Joe Schmo that doesn't know their
Yes,
stuff about
yes,
fitness. So you
yes.
you need this mixture of personality and then like knowledge and skill set. So like, how did you assemble the team that made it such a special place? Because we know people are a big part of it too, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So in the beginning stuff is I think not as useful as a map because like real talk, at the beginning it was luck, right? Like the first couple people, it was purely just like like the one guy we hired, like Kyle, who we call Beast, who was like one of our like literally the first trainer I hired, was literally a guy I had met like once in my gym. And I just knew he was like pretty friendly and he's a big, good looking, muscular guy. And you know, I could tell talking with him that he was serious, right? And he's gone on, he's about to be a physical therapist. I mean, this dude like was like the PRI mash. Like he was like a serious fitness dude. But again, I can't say I really even knew that. I was just like, hey, I'm looking for trainers. You know, I reached out to this guy I met once. And he turned out to be amazing at training and just wonderful to be around, just this gentle heart. And then another was a dear friend of mine that I had worked with as not worked with, but we were part of like the actor community in New York City. And he was just super dynamic and charismatic. And he knew a ton of people. And his dad had trained with Pavel, like was his dad was like a army, like a military like, his dad was a hard man. He was a hard man. And he was like a kettlebell guy before it was even like a thing. So I knew that he knew about kettlebells. I was like, hey Brian, you want to come do this thing with me? And and I think that core base, along with my business partner, Michael, my best friend from high school, kind of created this little crew of people that were like super down to have fun, were, you know, pretty charismatic, and also like really loved the training piece. Now, that doesn't scale indefinitely, right? And we still, if I'm being like really honest, I think the first like few hires, there still was like a lot of luck involved because I can't say I had much of a methodology. What happens is, and this is the thing too, I think about MFF is oftentimes, you know, when people are like, oh, they did like $34 million. The thing on MFF is like, I think MFF gets like too much credit for the beginning when we didn't know what we were doing and we were just super lucky. And I think like maybe could get a little bit more credit for operationalizing that, something that could have like gone up and gone back down real fast. You know, we managed to turn into a real business in the air. So for gym owners listening, you know, when you're thinking about building a staff, one thing that we did really well over the years that worked for us, and I don't say it works for everybody, is we actually hire a lot of clients. So one thing we did was hire a lot of clients because these were already people that particularly at MFF, they understood the culture. We really knew them as people. So we really, because you don't learn a lot about people by how they show up as a client, right? By the way they train, by the way they communicate. And that worked really, really well for us because they knew a lot of things and then we would just train them as needed. But because the culture of MFF was so focused on technical proficiency, you know, they knew a lot of stuff after they'd been baking in those juices, to mix a metaphor, for several months. Now, the other thing that we did, which I think is a little bit more useful, but still a little harder to do, is, you know, we really developed like a network. So we were always going to events. We started getting a name, and that actually helped, I think, with trainers as much as the clients, right? I think we had like some pretty good word of mouth. Still wasn't perfect. And frankly, for hiring staff, we have the same issues we do with the clients, where it's great. And people say, and it is true, it's great to be very clearly not for most people and very clearly for a certain kind of person, but it does limit things, right? And listen, there's a lot of amazing trainers in your city that are great at customer service, that are great at training, and they just don't want to be at a gym where someone's going to be running around, you know, dressed up like a monkey, right? Like it's just like it's too weird for them. And I totally, totally get that. So I think that foundation was what got us most of the way there. I think there's some other things I'll pull up here and then, you know, maybe you can direct where you want the conversation to go. But certainly since then, we've developed a lot of systems for, you know, very like kind of baked out 11-step process that we take through when we're looking to hire somebody, how we approach interview questions, really vetting people by a specific set of codified values, which is, you know, super important, never perfect, but definitely still worth doing. So yeah, I'll pull up there and then maybe you can bring
Yeah,
us where you
yeah.
think would be
Like
most useful for listeners.
I know the listeners are going to want me to dig into that 11-step process because I think in today's world, I find that so many people, this is a huge pain point for them. Like they want to scale to the moon, but they just can't get the talent. And it's funny, as you were sharing that story about luck, I was just thinking about a time that I was in my first gym with my one other trainer, just the two of us, and a guy just walked in and said, "Hey, are you hiring?" And I really wasn't, but for some reason, like he just seemed like, a really nice guy. We started like chopping it up with him. I was like, "You know what, man? We'll find something for you around here. Can you show up Monday 8 a.m.?" And like he just talked himself into a job that didn't exist at my gym. And he too ended up being one of our best trainers. And I was just like, wow, thank God I said yes to that opportunity. So then we went on to make a way more stringent way of screening through people. So again, I see some similarities in our story there. But yeah, like a lot of gym owners tell me, hey, it's a tough talent pool, or I'm in a competitive area, all these gyms fighting for the same trainers. How do you go about interviewing them and deciding
Yep.
that, hey, this person is going to be the right fit? Let's go ahead and push
Yep.
them forward.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, think starting at the top, right? And this would like dig right into like right now, 2025, right? Because I did sell MFF, but I also own a gym in New Jersey. And we've hired a couple people over the literally the past month, with the most recent hire starting last week. So this is very fresh for me. So, in this environment, it's true, it is a little bit harder in many ways. And a lot of that I think has to do with COVID. I think there's a lot of trainers now that I think correctly see, oh, I have this other thing I could do. I could make probably the same money with like a couple of online clients and not do anything. So that has, I think, done a ton to shrink the market. Now, the good news is not every trainer actually is going to be very good at that or like doing that or actually have the skill to market and sell that type of business. It's a different hustle. It can be a great hustle, but it's not for everybody. There's still a lot of people that like fitness, they want to be trainers, but they like to work in person and they don't do their own thing and they just want like a good gig. So the first step, I think, is just like marketing, marketing, and not relying on one fishing pole in the water. So I think I have a YouTube video people can find on my YouTube channel about like 15 places that I think you should look for trainers, because I think when you're looking to hire, you do have to do a full court press. And it's a combination of thinking of current clients, asking your trainers for referrals, networking, local colleges, running ads, going to conferences, emailing your clients to see if they know other people, maybe even offering a finder's fee, right? You have to be good at like the job description has to have a sexy, attention catching headline. You have to really sell the benefits on it. So you start with getting as many people as possible, because particularly when you're hiring trainers in 2025, you're just gonna have to kiss a lot of frogs. That's just the game, right? So you can't undo the fact that you're gonna have a lot of people writing you that struggle to, put together sentences in a coherent way, which for a lot of us, that's kind of hard. That's sort of piece of the game, is how you're communicating. And by the way, I'm not saying like in a hateful, flippant way, but just like that's the reality. So, in my mind, I'm looking for, if I'm going to hire somebody, I know I'm going to need at least 2025 applications. Right. Now, the other thing that I found to be very useful in 2025, and this is a growing niche in the industry, is working with recruiters. There's a few different resources that we've used over the year. I have a pal named Jesse Stackhouse, Just Fitness Staffing, I think is the name for a company. There's also a tech platform we've used called Fiber, FIBR. And these can be useful, but I think my observation is using these sort of recruiting services are very similar to over-relying on paid digital media. It's the same thing, because you're paying them a lot of money for a very powerful result that can be very helpful, and you're getting a lot of volume, but not always the highest quality stuff. You have to supplement that with the ground game hustle, because I find a similar phenomena happens in my experience marketing gyms, where there's something that, this is not like the secret. I'm not saying it's like some law of attraction thing, but I don't know. You put a lot of effort in your marketing, and if you're really doing it intentionally, you start getting these weird freebies out of nowhere, like a former client comes back or such. You just like, the clients are coming from sources not where you're putting the effort, but there's something about just getting that energy going. I
Yeah.
think similarly, it would be a mistake to rely on a recruiter the way it would be a mistake to just rely on paid ads and have no organic hustle. Because again, you just can't. I can't overstate enough the primary determinant. It's actually like your gym. It's like, a lot of people do what I do as a gym business coach get very upset when everyone's like, "I want more leads. I want more leads." And we, and you know this, Dustin, like when you're in the game long enough, you're like, Is it more leads, or is it like you're not good and nobody stays, right?
Training,
Like,
yeah,
or that like you're not following up, right? You don't have gym reinforcements. You're just like letting people fall through the cracks, right?
yeah,
But it is true, all things being equal, if you have 1,000 leads every week, probably no matter how bad everything is, you're probably going to be okay. So I think a similar principle is in play here for finding the people. Okay. So I'll maybe pull up there, but I do think like that's the first thing is it's you have to put in 10 times more work. I think business partnerships the same way. You just have to do 10 times more volume than you think is reasonable. And a lot of people, and I love you, gym owners. I'm not yelling at you, but a lot of gym owners will like, I put up an Indeed ad. I didn't get anybody, or I did like one
yeah.
Facebook post. And it's like, that
They're
ain't it, baby. That ain't it, baby.
they're like, I guess their belief of the volume required is way off than what we know it's gonna take. Because it's a
Yeah.
funnel. Just like how you need a
Yep.
funnel
Yep.
to acquire
Yep.
leads, you have a
Yep.
funnel of team
Yep.
members. And the reason that I just feel like this is such a vital thing is like this is what you're selling. Like, Apple sells the iPhone, Ford sells the car, you're selling the human you decide to hire. And, I see the connection of team retention and client retention. So, like, if you pick poorly, it's almost like you in the future putting yourself up for major client turnover. So, it's like be super, super particular because this will lead to the health of your business, is this person, right? So, yeah, I'll let you continue on
Yeah.
with that 11-step process.
Yep.
We've put out the volume, we got lots of applications coming in. How's the filtration kind of look like?
Hey guys, just taking a quick break to ask for one thing. If you can give us a 5-star review, it'd mean the world to me. It helps get me feedback on what you're enjoying about the show and how we're adding value to your business. And it helps us get the word out so we can turn the tide on this war against obesity. So give us a 5-star review and let's get back to the show.
Yeah. So I'll tighten this up like a little bit for the purposes of our listeners, because some of the steps are like highly specific. They're like, if you're doing a internal hire, you want to let the team know first and let them apply, right? So I think the next steps there, right, assuming you did a good job description, you got your applicants. For me, I like to do a phone screen. I want to do a group interview. I want to do a stress test. I want to do one-on-one. I want to do a reference check, right? So the phone interview is, and you can do different things. Like, to be honest, my preference, which is like, I'm sad to say because of the environment, unfortunately, I have to do more of the legwork. My preference would be everybody sends me a short video so I get a sense of
Mm,
vibe, right?
yeah.
Because the reality is, a lot of a client's perception of whether they want to work with this person or not is really two things: warmth, competence. Do I think that they like me? I'll like them. There's something about them that I find likable enough, right? I'm not saying everybody needs to be hyper charismatic or golden lab, but frankly, it doesn't hurt our industry. But also, are they competent, right? Can they speak well enough? They have enough sense of personal inner confidence that I can trust this person with my body. That I trust that they know what they're doing. Maybe I'm not trusting them to like run the whole show, right? A lot of gyms, you do well to really build a brand that people trust the system of the gym. But the reality is, if the coach is facilitating, particularly your pickier clients, your more intelligent clients, are going to want to see some markers that this is somebody I can trust with keeping an eye on me and understanding how my body is being exposed to loads. So video would be great if you can do it. You could consider that. These days, I just find it's too much of a drag. So I just bang the phones, just get people on the phone as fast as I can. And I do a 10-minute call. And it's literally like, hey, this is going to be super fast call. I just want to make sure yoop doop doop. Now, by this point, I've already clarified what the pay is, what the hours are, um, and any other important logistics about the role. But I'm still going to, the very first thing I'm doing is like, just so confirming it's X dollars per hour. The position starts such and such. It is this many hours to start. We need this availability. Is that all good with you? Because still, and I confirmed on the text before, I'll still have like, still 1 out of 10 people are like, oh, I can't do that. You're like, oh, okay. So I confirm all that stuff. Then I'm going to ask just a little bit and a very high level, because I just kind of want to hear them talk at this point. Right. Like, I can't really tell if you can coach off this. I just want to see, like, how do you speak? So just like, tell me about your career. Tell me about your background and how you got in training. And then the second question needs to be something cool. So tell me more about how you think the name of X gym fits into your career path. And then I'll ask, great, what questions do you have for me? And that's it, right? And this call can be sometimes like 6 to 7 minutes. And I usually in the beginning, I will frame up, we'll be making decisions by the end of the week, but I know I'm going to make the decision before the end of the call. So I'm going to give them a dopamine hit if I want to talk to them. Like, well, this is amazing. I'd love to keep this conversation going. We're definitely going to talk to you. Expect to hear from me X, right? And I'll be clear. This is the next thing that's going to happen. Here's when it's going to happen, because you're actually already working on staff retention. You're already working on staff retention because you're modeling. I'm always going to do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. So, and then if somebody's like not a fit, I usually won't tell them that in there unless they just do the logistics. And I personally still like to always follow up, even with a phone call, thank them for their time, let them know we're going another way, and we'll be in touch. So that's the phone call. Then I like to do a group interview. If you could do it in person, that's great. You can do Zoom, I think, if you need, but I want that awkwardness. And I want at least 2 people, but no more than 4. My perfect hire for one position, I would do 2 sessions. So I might be looking at 4 to 8 people in the group interview round. If I have to get by with 1, that's fine, but I want usually at least 3 to 4 people this part of the process. And we are going to ask them a series of questions. Usually this will be run by 2 people on the team, not even necessarily like me. So for instance, my gym in New Jersey, my co-owner and our fitness director ran these. And we have like, I think 2 to 3 questions each. We ask them round robin style. And I'm listening for the content of their questions, certainly, but I'm also just looking for what their vibe is, how they're interacting with the other people, because I think that too shows a lot, right? So from there, then we're going to move on to the next step. Now we're starting to whittle it down. Now I'm going to do what we call a stress test. So now I want to see them do something that's kind of hard and somewhat emotionally confronting in the context of what their role is going to be. So with a trainer, this might be something like teach a mock class for some of the staff and clients. Or it could be, if you want something even simple, you teach me how to deadlift as the owner, right? I'm going to give you a realistic version of a harder to coach client. Or maybe, we're going to do a phone sales call and I want to see, I'm going to give you a script. I'm not going to give you a lot of time to prepare. I'm purposely not giving you a lot of time to prepare. I just want to see how you do on your feet. And again, because so much of training requires people feeling comfortable and not getting overly nervous in imperfect situations with challenging clients, that I want to see, again, how do you respond under pressure? Plus, I need to see, do you know how to coach? Because like, real talk amongst us chickens, she's probably not listening. But once I hired somebody at Mark Fisher Fitness of all places, and I didn't have her do it. And this girl was wonderful. She was so sweet. She seemed like be amazing. And she was unable to speak at higher than this volume and was very comfortable with extended periods of silence. And that was very challenging in a place like MFAB, probably challenging for any class model. So at any rate, then we have the final one-on-one. And the one-on-one depends on the business. Usually I like to do this. It's like the gauntlet, right? So I want to hang out for like 45 minutes. I have a bunch of questions that I've created that map to the various values of the business, right? So I can guarantee you, if you interview me, I'm going to ask you, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a boss, how you addressed it, and what the outcome was. Well, the joke is this. The joke is this. I care more about like how you're answering it. And it's like almost a trap, right? Because the moment the person's like, this boss was terrible, right? Like my dream answer is something like, well, I did have a lot of conflict with this particular boss. And I know that the role in retrospect that I was playing was this. So I addressed it by talking to them directly, right? And again, you can't really answer it wrong, but I'm looking to understand if candor for me is like a core value, like I need candor. I cannot work with somebody I know it's not going to tell me too straight if they've got beef with me, if they think I'm messing up. And again, it's different people have different relationships with conflict. I understand that, but I'm looking to glean based on these specific questions. And I think that's another important, like hyper tactical takeaway. I suggest asking about specific times in the past, not hypotheticals. If you ask hypotheticals like, how would you handle blah, blah, blah? Well, boss, then I'd come into your office and I'd tell you what for, right? Like, no, ask about a specific time in the past. And a lot of times you'll get data too, because they won't be able to think of one. And that's also okay. That just might mean that that's not a value that's very activated in them. Again, it's not a deal breaker. It's not that I necessarily can't work with it, but it's more of the data set, right? So this is how this conversation goes. Again, and I have a bunch of like questions. Also, people want to email me, mark@businessforunicorns.com. I can send them like a one-pager. I have like 17 different questions I like. I don't ask all of them all the time, and some other guidance for how you frame up this interview to, get a little bit more honest response, because everyone's gonna be their best behavior in an interview. Then I'm gonna do reference checks. I've done this wrong too. I've done it all wrong. I've definitely hired a guy that turned out to be a disaster. They had worked for my friends, but I didn't bother to call them like a dum-dum, right? But you want to call the reference checks. Your pro tip here Here's your pro tip here. You want to ask them not like what you think their biggest issue were. What would Dustin's colleagues say was the biggest frustration they had working with them? Right. But not you, manager. You had no problem with a manager. Right. So again, I'm trying to ask questions in such a way to make people safe to be honest. And listen, reference checks, like real talk, it's litigious world. It's kind of hard actually to really, sift through the sand to find the diamonds in that, Chad. But all of these things taken together will create, as you said, Dustin, I think it's the right word for it, a filter, right? Because all of these data sets are imperfect. It's sort of like if somebody's looking for body composition, weight, waist circumference, body fat percentage, mirror, clothes fit, they're all imperfect. But if you take them all together, you're going to get pretty close to what's true. Now, my final unhappy thought here, before we can talk about whatever else you want to talk about, is you're still gonna get it wrong. You're still gonna get it wrong sometimes. Like, I think if you do it really good, you'll get it right like 60% of the time, maybe 65 if you're lucky. But 4 out of 10, 1 out of 3 hires are still not gonna make it because you can really still only find out so much in this. Now, if you're in the situation where you can run an internship program, listen, the best way to know if you can work with somebody is if you work with them, right? It's like this Seth Godin, I think, said something once. I can't know if I can work with you until I work with you. Now, certainly, you could make it clear that it's a probation the first 3 months. I'll tell you, I don't think that's wrong. It's not my personal preference because I think it's maybe slightly adversarial when I'm bringing somebody on board. Like, and just so you know, this might not work out. I think if they're an adult, they know it might not work out. So I'm not going to like overly hit that. But I think I think we know it's like we're not going to keep working together if it doesn't work out. So if you can do an internship or something where you really get the chance to get to know people, here's another pro tip for you, right? If you're looking to recruit and develop relationships and you don't have an opportunity right then and there, give them a free month, give them 3 free months and see if they show up, right? Because part of the process too, I also didn't mention is I'm going to make them take a session or two in the studio. Cause again, I want to see how are they coached? How do they show up to other clients? Are they on time? What does their movement look like? Right. Cause that's another piece too. Outside of the stress test in that class, you got to have some chops, right? And it's hard at a glance to understand, does this person actually know how to look at a human body and based on what position things are in, tell them specific things that move them into a better position? And again, a lot of that stuff can be trained. I think at the end of the day, that stuff's probably easier trained than just like, are you cool to hang out with? Do you fit the values of the company, right? But anyway, that's an overview of how I have looked at hiring and some painful lessons learned along the way.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. And a couple of things I'll just double click on is internship. I can't like just stress that enough because I almost rarely had to go actually recruit because we were partnered with a local college in California called Cal Poly Pomona, and they would just blast it out to all the students in kinesiology majors every spring and fall. So we would get an influx of 12 plus interns all across our locations. And then we would end up hiring a lot of them because they were in that young, hungry stage and they wanted to apply what they're learning. And one thing I love about students is they're used to taking notes and taking orders from their professors. So
Yeah.
you're just like their work professor. You're
Yeah.
giving the notes on how I want
Yeah.
things done. So I would really stress if you have a university or college nearby, get that in place. It is well worth the time and energy to get it launched. It just creates a farm system of
Yes.
future coaches.
Yeah. If you can figure that out, like I said, very jealous of some listeners might know one of my biz partners, Biz Unicorns, is a guy named Pete Dupuis, who is the co-owner of a Cressy Sports Performance, which is probably maybe the top baseball performance facility in the world.
Absolutely.
And yeah, they have such a feeder system there. It's so unfair. Like anytime they need to hire, it's like, wow, which of these 100 highly qualified people? You. So we all can't be as lucky as Pete. But yeah, I agree. If, as Dustin says, if you can get an internship program, do it.
And then the other thing I was going to point out was, getting it wrong. I definitely can think of many times like that. And I think something to consider is people do change. And the person you hired might not be the same person in a year. The biggest curveballs I found is life curveballs, right? Like getting married, getting divorced, having kids, health issues. It's usually not you and your culture. It's something at home that then finds its way to the gym and to your business, and that creates change, right?
Yeah.
And you can't see that on an interview.
Yeah. That's hard, man. Yeah. And that's like, listen, that's like the real talk, right? Like this is a topic for like the the real G's, right? The people real out there, like because that's the type of thing too that if you're not in the game, if you haven't been in the trenches, you don't know like that particular phenomenon because like that's one of the hardest things. I don't know there's a perfect solve for that. People that have owned a gym for a few years are gonna like really be like, oh, it's gonna cut you to the core, right? That trainer that was just on fire for 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, and just something changed, right? It's like Dustin said, maybe it was a family situation, maybe just like just who they are as a person is evolving. It's also true that being on the floor as a trainer, trainee, and employee is not always, but it's often a young person's game, right? So you often have the social stigma where like if you're making, decent money, maybe even in like your early 30s as a single trainer, an employee, like you might be pretty pumped about this, right? You're wearing sweatpants to work. If you're at a cool gym, you're making decent money, like you're feeling cool, right? There is this rightly or wrongly, the social stigma where that same trainer at the age of 40 is maybe not feeling as good about their status as being an employee of a gym, right? And not only that, but now if their life stage has progressed, they have or want to have kids, they have or want to get married, they have or want to have a mortgage. Our industry is not set up such that there's unlimited career opportunities within a given gym. Particularly a lot of you listening, if you have a smaller micro gym, right? The average gym in America makes $300,000 per year, right? Most gyms are making 100K to, the million is sort of the rarefied area. You have the crazy like MFFs, but that's like a handful. So on balance, a given gym, usually you're going to have room for maybe one, what I call a sous chef, right? Like one second in command, maybe somebody else you can give some kind of responsibility. But if you're a modest gym with only a handful of spots, you don't have unlimited upward mobility. Further, we're talking about the real stuff here, Dustin. Further, you also have the terrible situation where someone you love that you want to take care of, and they're getting that distinct whiff, that old trainer smell. I don't mean like old in age, but I mean they've been around for a while, trainer smell, and they're just subtly degrading in ways you can't even really have a disciplinary conversation around because it's just the sense that they're just like not totally happy and they want the next thing. And maybe you do have the opportunity, but you discover painfully they're actually not suited for it. They're actually not the person that can to be a manager or sales or head of program design or whatever little micro fiefdom you're looking to create in your gym, right? And these are all, presenting a bunch of like challenging problems. Again, probably my old hats in the audience are like, oh no, shut up, Mark, stop it, stop, you're triggering me. But this is like the real talk out here. Like these are the situations that get challenging. And if I can maybe offer like actually one quick thing that you might want to consider. And again, I don't know if this works for everybody, but what Pete does at Cressy Sports Performance is they hire people for 2 years with the expectation they will leave after 2 years. Then if the employee applies and petitions, they can be considered for third year with no pay raise. Now again, that's Cressy Sports Performance, right? I mean, listen, I do okay. I got Mark Fisher Fitness. I guess I don't anymore, but I did. But it's still not Cressy Sports Performance, right? That's not the situation that we're in, right? But what I do is when I bring people on board for trainers, I set the expectation, look, I want to make you the best human you can be and develop you as much as you can professionally for whatever big dreams you want in your life. And my expectation is I really want you to be here for a year, ideally two, and probably no more than three, right? And I want to set that expectation because I also think as an industry, if we are going to have a majority of our roles be slightly more junior positions, we want to make it okay for people to move on, right? And in fact, it's better because again, it's hard for somebody to still be as excited particularly if they're just doing the on the floor trainer, they're not going to usually be on fire 5 years in the way they were when they were 6 months to 1 year in. And I think we want to make this okay. And I think we want to, that's part of the reasons, maybe we can talk briefly. I don't have a ton of time left, but about developing and managing staff. It's part of the reason why I think we need to be engaged in continual conversations on a quarterly basis about what do you want from your life? Where do you see this going? Probably an annual check-in that really helps them take an inventory of what they want their life to be, of what their dreams are. And then as the owner, to the extent that you can do that within the confines of the business, amazing. And the extent that you can't, you can start to set those expectations and figure out what you can do from your vantage point to support this person. Because it's not going to be in anyone's best interest if somebody sticks around for 6 years, 9 years, 12 years, and you all know it's like not working perfectly, but it's kind of working okay, and it's not bad enough to end it. And again, I'm not saying like those situations are always possible to avoid, but I think the more we can sort of force people to think about what they want out of their life and have those developmental conversations, the more I think people can feel safer to think about what the next thing is. And again, it might mean in some cases you're, as I have in the past with people on my team, like look to help them look for jobs because I knew it was time to move on. And I think as the industry matures, hopefully we'll see more and more of that.
I just gotta say it's such a refreshing take that I wish more gym owners would adopt is like literally painting the picture of when they're gonna exit because everyone's excited for them to enter. But I think, I've seen this too. When we brought in the intern coaches, they'd almost make the people who've been around 2 or 3 years kind of pep up because they're like, oh, these guys are young and hungry for my job. And that's what I liked because if I didn't have any new talent, the team could just start to get complacent and the energy kind of just dissipate. And it's like, there's no fire to get out of here.
Yeah.
And
And
that's what you're
absolutely, man.
changing, right? With that
Yeah.
conversation. It's like,
And we've,
want
yeah,
you
yeah,
out of
yeah.
here at some point.
Yeah, because and we've definitely had like, listen, my team has been amazing over the years, right? I think we had like over 100 employees over my tenure running MFF and incredible people. And, really through no fault of their own. Listen, I have a role to play too here as the owner. There definitely were some periods where there was some stagnant water. And the thing about it is that makes this so hard. It's not that people are horrible. It's not that they're stealing money from you, right? It's not that they're like cursing off clients. It's just this general sense of malaise, this general sense of, if anybody's seen Inside Out 2, there's the
Yes.
ennui, like
Yes.
ennui. There's a sense of ennui where everyone's like, just like, "Arr." um, and like, listen, again, I'm not here to say you can't do this because listen, I can also think of a couple examples from MFF history of people that were there for years and they were great. They were just the type of person where they were just awesome every day. And like they were so happy in that position. So I want to be very clear. I'm not suggesting that you have to like chop off, that people need to be in and out every 2 to 3 years. But I think it's better to set that expectation. This is going to be a short-term thing. Make it not weird if you need to start lovingly, shove with love, as my Broadway actress wife says. If you're in a Broadway show, if you're on as a swing, you shove you with love because I don't quite know where I am, but I'm singing. So you're going to shove with love. You want to shove them with love to the next thing. And then it's a bonus. And then it's instead of it feeling like the shameful thing that you're helping them go, instead it can just be this cool thing where like, look, this is still working. This is working for me. And then you can keep jamming on.
Love it. Well, one thing that you brought to mind was Chick-fil-A says we're a leadership company that masquerades as a chicken
Yes.
restaurant.
Yes.
So it kind of sounded like you almost did that. Like we're a leadership company that masquerades as a gym and we're here to develop people. So that's the final thing I just want to pick your
Yeah.
brain on. Any specific tactics that you did that you guys developed people to make them better
Yeah.
that you had built in as a system? That'd be great.
Yes. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, a lot of stuff we could dig into. I mean, I'll say this. So certainly a commitment to education has been very important to us over the years. So I'll say at a high level, and I think a lot of people know this, but just really being willing to invest in training and bring in trainers. Instantly, the new owner of MFF, we brought in several times to do trainings for the staff because he also has taught for the RKC and Josh Hank at Sandbags and Original Strength. We had Kevin Carr from Certified Functional Strength Coach come in and we'd like close down the business, I think 6 months apart to train the entire staff on the CFSC1 and then on the CFSC2. So I think that kind of investing, I think creating standards around this is important. Real talk, I don't think I've ever like 100% nailed this because the only problem is as soon as you make people read the books, it just doesn't feel as cool. I will say if you make them read the books, you can do it. Just like realize you're playing with fire as soon as you remove that autonomy, and then make sure you picked a damn good book, and then make sure it's applicable to their job, and that you help them see how it is. Because if you don't create some sort of team meeting workshop that's showing that information, they're gonna be like, "I read this book and I don't get it." And my first fear is I would get very frustrated because I'd be like, "It's so obvious," and then over time I was like, "All right." Take the feedback, Mark. You have to help them understand how to apply this. The final thing I'll share that is tactical, but I think valuable is some kind of regular one-on-one meeting pulse. So a lot of gym owners miss this. Now, this meeting pulse might be maybe every 6 months or maybe even every 3 months if it's a super part-time person. It might be, I would say with if you have a sous chef, if you have like a general manager and you're the owner, that's probably a weekly meeting, maybe every other week, but I think weekly meetings are a better pulse for that type of relationship. Trainers, a weekly meeting maybe is overkill because if it's a pretty simple played out SOP and they're I don't mean it's in a negative way, but they're like, they're a cook, they're a rank and file trainer. Probably not those things to talk about every single week, but I think on a regular basis, doing a dedicated sit down to talk about the individual's performance, tracking to-do items, tracking things that they care about. It's also a formal opportunity for you to not only give feedback to them, but also get feedback about yourself and about the business, about what you could be doing to support them better. And then I think the overarching system I love to use is like a real dedicated quarterly check-in. So let me give you this like as a final, like write this down and steal this one. So we have an SOP for this. And the SOP is like spend 5 minutes on it. Do not spend more than 15. You're going to write it down in a Google Doc, and it's a few simple questions. It's thinking about your performance and thinking about your current behaviors. What behaviors should you do more of, or start doing? What behaviors should you keep doing? What behaviors should you stop doing and do less of? The fourth question is always, how can I/name of gym help support you more effectively? And then every quarter, I rotate a bonus question. Sometimes the question is like, tell me about which value in the business you think you are most effective at, and give me, 2 examples. Or imagine yourself on a park bench at 75 years old, giving yourself advice right now. What does your 75-year-old self say to you? Or tell me about a time you got praise from a manager that's particularly meaningful and impactful to me. What was the situation? What was the behavior? And why did it make such a positive impact on you? So those are some examples. And I think I've got it like maybe 12 or 16. You only need, 3 a year really, because the end of the year, you do the bigger annual check-in. But that's just one more, hopefully, things people can write down. And if you're not doing some dedicated one-on-one time, it's something to consider. You can go overboard, and I've done that too, right? Where if you're trying to meet people all the time, you're like, it could be inefficient at a certain point. But my observation is more gym owners err on the other side of just not having dedicated time to really connect in, to express care. And it's a just really powerful place to develop and coach and help the person develop as a professional. And, in a perfect world, dare I say it, as a human being.
Yes. Absolute gold, guys. I hope you guys all act on what Mark just dropped on you, because it was complete value bombs, and this can completely change the culture of your business. It can get your team retained a long time and help you grow your business to the next level. Mark, if they want to just follow you and see what you're doing and kind of tap into your world, where's the best place to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if they want to go to businessunicorns.com, they can check us out there and get a bunch of free goodies. I also wrote a little book, but we didn't talk about marketing today, but I recently wrote a little book of gym marketing secrets, which is a terrible name because it's really more like a checklist, and it's not really secrets because there's no secrets, by the way. I have to warn you, there's no magic, by the way. And if they go to, I think you can find it on the website, or I should know this offhand, it should be marketingsecretsbook.com. The other place you can check us out is we're pretty active on Instagram. I am not personally, though you can follow me if you want to look at pictures of my daughter that I reshare for my wife on stories. But if you go to @businessforunicorns, we post a lot of stuff there. I personally love writing. I love email marketing. So if you opted in for any of our resources, I think you'd find a lot of value and laughs. It's a real passion of mine. I would love to have you in I'd love to be in your inbox if that feels good for you.
Yes.
If you consent.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark. Appreciate you. And we'll definitely have you back probably in the future for a round 2 to talk all things marketing, man. So thanks for sharing all these wisdoms and gems for hiring staff members, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, my brother.
Hey, gym owners, let's face it, you probably don't love digital marketing. You probably don't want to go into Facebook and load the ad up and think of ad copy and creatives and optimize it daily. Well, hand that over to me and my team, because we're geeks about marketing and we want to flood your gym with new members so you can change their life. Let us do what we do best. All right, go to gymreinforcements.com, book a call. Don't bring the credit card. It's not a hard pitch. It's just a conversation to see if we're a good fit. Talk soon.